This episode is about minutes 111 through 115 of The Rise of Skywalker with returning guest Christina Ward. Hello there, and welcome to Star Wars Music Minute, where we celebrate the music and sound of Star Wars 5 cinematic minutes at a time. I'm Chrysanthi Tan, but you can call me Xanthi, and today is all about minutes 111 through 115 of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. In this excerpt of the film, Sidious implores Rey to strike him down, but instead of doing that, she fakes him out and force-transfers her lightsaber to Ben Solo, and then they both fight off a bunch of people. Then Palpatine notices their dyad in the Force and starts to suck the life out of them and regenerate himself. Meanwhile, Poe is about to give up when Lando shows up with a massive citizens fleet of volunteers ready to join the fight, which is a moment that I really liked. But we'll get there. I'm really happy to have Christina Ward back on the show. This is Christina's third time on the main show, but you probably recognize her as a member of the Bad Batch. So we've talked lots about the TV shows like Acolyte, Bad Batch, and/or Ahsoka. Did we talk about Ahsoka? No, we didn't stream about Ahsoka. But anyway.
Nope.
Yeah. Hey.
Hi, welcome. It's lovely to be here with you on the Star Wars Music Minute.
I failed the last couple times I had you on, sort of. I mean, the first time it was like I didn't know what to expect because you've never been on before. But then last time, when we talked about vocal stuff, but you didn't have any vocal things to talk about in those minutes. And I did get comments like, you should have Christina back when there's actually something vocal to talk about. And you know what? Everyone was right. And so here we are today. We have
a lot of voice things that we can talk about.
Absolutely. And I'm excited to get into them with you. They're kind of not typical things.
Yes.
Very exciting.
We don't see a lot of Sith rituals.
We do not.
And while Palpatine always has a sonorous voice, he's not always talking the way he does in this. I mean, the way it starts, she will draw her weapon. It's very, if you watch it out of context of the movie, it's really melodramatic. It's suddenly.
Yeah. I would say Palpatine in the prequels, probably Palpatine throughout the whole saga is probably very melodramatic, though somehow even amped up even more here.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. I'm sure when he addresses the Senate, it's probably a similar deal.
True. In that case, it's it is really melodramatic and amped up, but he's still in a human body, so it feel like there is a natural stopping point, whereas with this, he's in such a grotesque form that he goes to a very far place, and then the sound design even makes it the way that he's mixed just amplifies it even more. And he had I don't know, his voice is amazing. Shall we begin listening to the minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to be cutting in the middle of some music that we talked about at the end of last episode. But yes, we're jumping right into Ben keeps running toward the Sith Citadel. Okay, here we go.
She will draw her weapon.
Okay, I'll pause there for a second so I can put these very dark images of Ben Solo running on screen. It's very dark. It's very, very dark. But this is I guess I have to get your take on his outfit and his Ben Solo look. Does it feel very different to you? What do you think of the music?
I love that. I feel that his outfit is not, I'm not going to say a left field question, but I didn't even think about that. That's great. Well, I probably didn't think about it because it's so dark.
I know, it is really dark, but there's no like armor.
But we can see him later really well.
Yeah, we will see him later much better. So we'll come back to this question. Just
we'll come back to the outfit.
Yeah. And then the music that we're hearing is Kylo Ren's redeemed theme. So it is
that is that the Kylo Ren redeemed theme?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yep.
I specifically was going to ask about that because I do not do such a good job of keeping a catalog of which themes go with which words. And so,
for sure.
Nice. I mean, that was good. They used that really successfully, obviously, in this scene.
I agree. We talked a bunch about it in the last episode, but J.J. Abrams wanted a redeemed theme for him, like wanted, I guess the most simplified way of saying it for, I don't know, sort of a non-musical audience would be like, it's kind of a major version of it, but it kind of is a major version of it, basically. Yeah.
Is dark and scary, and it goes
Yeah. So that's all very good. And then we get let me just start playing again, and then we can talk over it. So then it already is modulating up. Then we have these cluster stabby chords. And then that's the Knights of Ren theme.
Draw her weapon.
It's not so easy to hear you over the...
Oh, good to know.
Over the audio.
Okay, good to know. I will not play it so loud then. So it is, we were hearing the redeemed theme, kind of do a key change. It was kind of modulating up, it went. And then we heard those cluster stabs. Da, 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 da. And then we hear Knights of Ren theme. Da, 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 da. Which is very similar to the Kylo Ren theme, I think.
Without the upward leap, just with the chromatic movement, I guess.
Yeah, it stays instead of da, 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 it doesn't go, it doesn't do a big leap. It just stays in a very stagnant place. Da, 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 da.
Totally.
Yeah, and I believe he is going to be fighting off Knights of Ren and various factions of people trying to stop him in this. So just a little brief.
Yeah, and something that you and I have in common in our love of Star Wars is specifically the books and the audiobooks. And so I made a point to go back and read this scene as well. And I think when they narrate it, the focus was last time Ben ran through this corridor, no one stopped him and he felt welcome, etc. And this time the Knights of Ren appear. And it's a further stab in the back because it makes him realize that they were his best friends and they were lying the whole time. They were actually Palpatines the whole time.
Yeah, it kind of sucks when you think that you're going to be overtaking the big bad, but then it was really all part of it was really all part of his plan all along. You were just playing into it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, not a good feeling.
Though probably makes it easier for him to be fuck you.
Yeah, totally. The other thing that didn't come across in the movie that is interesting in the book, and it's interesting because in the movies, this kind of stuff to me never comes across, but maybe that's because I'm not so skilled sometimes with reading things like facial cues and stuff. But it says hate rolled off them in waves in the fetid air. And in Sith stuff, use of hate and fear is actually really a plot point almost. It's relevant. So it's just interesting.
Are you saying that when you're watching the movie, you're not necessarily perceiving that the Knights of Ren have hate and fear rolling off of them?
No,
okay.
I just see they're guards and they've been told to kill him. Not
right.
all of a sudden they hate him.
Right. I mean, I don't know that I get that from the movies either. If that makes you feel any better, I feel like the novel, because you're talking about the Ray Carson novelization, I think.
Yes, I must be, surely.
Yeah, so
It's sad that I don't know. Yes, I am.
I feel like, so the novelizations tend to take what's on screen and then like add more detail to kind of make it make more sense, I feel. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
That was really relevant here because we haven't gotten to it yet, but like once they start fighting, the like Ray Carson actually says, oh, at first Kylo fights this person with this weapon that they're using, and then he fights this person with this weapon, and then Ray told him something in the Force. You don't get that in the movie.
Right.
Yeah,
right,
it's just
right.
fascinating. There's interesting things. So
yeah, and I think sometimes the novelizations maybe are looking at like original script material that got cut from the movie, so they're able to, I don't know, put the deleted scenes back in, basically. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, so we left off with the Knights of Ren theme coming in.
Mm-hmm. And then we're hearing like a timpani go, a timpani is doing the thing the timpani does. I'm going to go back a little bit so we can hear it. And then it's going to transition back to where Sidious and Rey are, because they're they're kind of like in a different room or part of the Citadel than Kylo is. Okay.
She will draw her weapon.
So we're hearing Sith Whispers.
Come to me.
Yeah. We're already hearing some whispering.
Yeah, there's a few layers to this. We've got Palpatine talking. We've got the Sith crowd of disciples. We've got, as far as I can tell, not a lot going on orchestrationally, because it's like, it seems to me like overall it's just one big building line so that they can eventually build to the climax of this speech, as opposed to so much going on in between. That's how I would describe it. But I do definitely think that orchestrationally the lower end, the alto instruments are featured towards the beginning of this, the viola, the cello, or maybe like violin, but on the G string.
Like what we just heard, basically.
No higher. Yeah, and then as we go on, they start to give higher pitch instruments a chance to perform the same lines. Yeah.
Yeah. I believe the violins
Those are
were
the
on the
layers, I
G
would
string. I think they were like. Yeah. Just
I do hear the.
You do hear.
I hear the warm softness of the violas, perhaps there as well.
Oh, you don't think violins can be warm and soft? No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know. They're a little dramatic down there on the G string.
Actually, that's okay. I'm going to listen for violas specifically this time around.
She will come to me.
Okay, I think they're violins, and this is why I think that, or at least a mix. Here's why: because since the open G string is the lowest note on the violin, and it is an open string, you can't vibrate it. So the only way you can play it is open. And I'm hearing open string timbre.
Oh my gosh, maybe that's what I think of as the warm viola timbre, because it's open string timbre. It's not vibratoed.
Interesting. Maybe. I mean, to be fair, a viola could also play that on an open string, but just as a rule, like generally speaking, unless it's written specifically in a score, don't use to not use vibrato or to use open strings. Musicians will avoid prolonged open strings because they'd rather pick a note where they could use vibrato. So like if I'm playing this on viola, I would be playing it up on the C string, a fingered note so that I could vibrate it instead of an open string. I would only play it open if I had to on the violin, but maybe that's interesting. Because I think people associate vibrato, like vibrated notes, with warmth.
Yeah.
Versus, however, I think in the lower strings, I could also see how the open strings are also warm, like a different kind of warm. Like for the upper strings, I don't think you're thinking this is warm.
There's comfortable warm, like when you walk into a heated building, and then there's like hot coffee, which, I feel like the like high string vibrato is definitely more of like a hot, not so comfortable thing. It's not soothing. It's heart-wrenching.
Yeah, and I think there's also more of a simplicity to this, to an open string. It's often evoked to have a more simple sound. Like I was doing an orchestra concert a couple weeks ago. It was a concerto by Anna Klein, and there was a movement that was like, it was, the strings were playing kind of like as simple and rustic as possible, and it said like use open strings wherever possible and very little vibrato. So like it was meant to have that more, I don't know, simple is absolutely not the right word. It's just maybe less dramatic sound. It definitely was kind of like a peaceful sort of piece. Yeah, I don't know.
Peaceful. That's a good way to say it. Less action, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But usually action has things that it means, in musically speaking, in terms of instrument playing. So that's not a great description word in this case. But yeah, and I also think that when I think of, for this overall 5-minute segment, the words I did write regarding the orchestration, open was actually one of the top things that I wrote, sounds of openness. Even that first instance of the Kylo Ren theme, or the Redeemed theme coming in, it was that thing where you do winds above the deeper instruments, and it gives that kind of weird, it kind of somehow makes us aware of the acoustic space between
There's like a cushioning.
Those things. Yeah, and I wish I knew more about how to describe that, but I don't. It's one of those things where you describe a feeling.
Are you talking about, okay, I'll play from the soundtrack so we can hear it just without other stuff.
Totally.
Okay. This part's not here. Here. Maybe it's also following the first statement, which is in the brass. So it feels there's a direct comparison with like first it's in brass and it's lower, and then it's higher and it's in woodwinds. So it does feel like it floats above more than what preceded it. Because I guess it's hard to like compare anything. And it's hard to compare things in music unless they're so extreme, or unless you have other things directly surrounding it to compare them to.
Yes. Always true.
And then there's the stabs. Timpani. You can hear like the muted brass sound there. Nice. We have a cat butthole.
She's very proud. Yeah, she's decided it's time that we're leaving her out.
And then this is when Sidious is like, she will draw her weapon, she will come to me. And then we're going to start getting low string thingy.
Associate ba-da-da with something?
Oh, that's a good question. I think like determination, probably. What about you?
I see it as a device just to move things along, so it's not so much all drones. But that's, yeah.
Yeah, because what you said earlier with like, it really seems like they're just trying to kind of climb higher and higher until the climax. This is like really where the climb is beginning. And I guess it is more interesting than just going like da 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 da. Adds a little bit of
because otherwise you would never notice it. It would be interesting to watch that along with. I did notice as I was watching the fight sequences that the fight sequences were pretty well timed with the score. Sometimes I feel like that's on purpose, and sometimes I feel like it's not. But I would go so far as to say that the fight sequence in this was so loud and present in terms of its sound design that it was totally part of the score. That was the percussion of the score, was Kylo Ren getting kicked a lot and punched and that sort of thing, and swords going.
Yeah, I agree.
I haven't decided if I'll use my new machete to replicate the sounds of.
What would you be hitting? Have you prepared?
Well, no, I would be sliding it along so that we get that scary sound. But I forgot to research if that's healthy for my machete.
Oh,
I don't want to hurt it.
Okay. We can't hurt the machete.
We can't hurt the machete. It must be treated delicately. But yes, they can't achieve that rising effect. Let's see, how long does that take? There's about a minute.
About 30 seconds
is how long that whole thing takes.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
You're right. More like
it's depending on when you start, but like it is more like at least 30 seconds, depending on when you start from.
It really does start. I mean, like ba 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 ba. That's all kind of in the alto range. A lot of brass. The high stuff is only just high woodwinds, meaning like not melodic woodwinds. And so, I guess that starts pretty early on. And the build up is indeed at the Jedi are dead.
And that's at 1. That's at like in 30 more seconds. No, in like 15 seconds.
Yeah,
the math is hard.
I put at 1 was when they hold the tones to the silence. That's how this whole thing ends. They build and build and build and build and build and build, and then fade away into silence on a higher pitch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we will definitely get there. I was also thinking that like the da-da-da thing does remind me, because there's this part earlier in the film on Kefbir when Rey is exploring the Death Star wreckage. And I do feel like the music is very like, has moments where it kind of feels like it's representing like an effort that she's making. Like maybe she's kind of having to leap up to a thing or like reach up to a thing. And so here what it sounds like to me is like having to like run up to grab one thing and then like, I don't know, hoist yourself up on another thing. Like it's not like a smooth sailing ascending effort. It's more like a ramp up in small bursts, like having to get this engine started.
Totally. So in a way, it's on the nose film scoring, sort of. Yeah. It could be like in that instance. It's like, oh, she's jumping and leaping, so we're gonna do a ba-da.
Yeah.
So I think that will come back later on. I have a point about some on the nose film scoring.
Cool. Okay, so we'll go back to the minutes.
To me.
Da-da-da!
She will take her revenge. And with a stroke of her saber, the Sith are reborn. The Jedi are dead.
And that's an interesting moment there where the sound starts to change because Rey and Ben are entering this kind of, I don't know, time-stopped state almost where they're beginning to sense each other. But yeah, that last leap is the biggest leap, I'd say, or at least one of the biggest leaps where it's like...
Reborn. The Jedi are dead.
Yeah. Like it goes all the way there. Yeah, that's a very interesting moment. I'm going to put some screenshots to show what is happening around this time. So basically, like Palpatine is, telling Rey what she's going to do, and like all his disciples are like, yeah. I mean, I don't know exactly what they're saying, but they're like,
so much misogyny. We're going to narrate in third person. She will draw. Sorry, I just had to bring that up. I think it's ridiculous the way he narrates in third person to get her to do what he wants. I just like.
I mean, he's not even saying you will. He's just saying she will.
Yeah. I don't know how it's supposed to make her feel.
Right. Also, I think it's really funny to, I think the misogyny comment is actually hilarious because Palpatine has so many bad things going for him that it's like, could be really anything.
Nobody ever brings up his misogyny because, I mean, talk about like all the other stuff.
Yeah. Don't forget about that.
Yep.
And she looks kind of like she's in she's not, at least at this time, she's not defying him. She's kind of just looks entranced. And I'm curious if you remember your first time watching this movie, did you worry that Rey was being kind of, I don't know, drawn into this? I was worried.
I'm not sure if I was worried. I think, I'm sure I was worried. I'm sure I was anxious about it. Yeah. But I was very hopeful, like, I hope she successfully tricks him somehow, or...
Yeah.
This is a weird scene for what you choose to focus on, since there's Kylo on the other side of the corridor doing... Yeah, there's a lot going on. I guess they're doing the thing where they switch frequently between two different dramatic situations. And they really build up that it's not going to go well, because when Kylo starts his fight with the Knights of Ren, it's not really going well. They're just basically taking turns punching him, and so they're really trying to play it off like things are not going well.
Yeah. I think the fact that also Rey is just not saying anything yet, like she's not being like, no, I will never do this or whatever. I mean, if she has said it before, but right now she's not. And because of the largeness of the ceremony, there's something about I think there's something about rituals and ceremonies that when they feel very bigger than the moment, like they have a way of feeling bigger than the moment sometimes. And so like a big tidal wave that encompasses, that encompasses the people in attendance. So this is like this is honestly such a weird situation that Rey finds herself in. And sense-wise, like she has like weird visuals. She has like really creepy audio that she's hearing. Like everything is just very strange and very big. So I can imagine it's messing with her quite a bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also at that time, I was also like, where are these people? Like, it's just really hard to see them. Like, I was like, I need a better look at the disciples. I wanted to get some, like a nice pan, a zoomed in pan of the disciples. I don't think we got that, but
yeah, I mean,
I wanted it.
Which makes it kind of more scary. Like they could be everywhere. They're just everywhere. And it sounds like they're everywhere. Like the audio, like it's not, obviously they're all on the left side of the auditorium or something. It really is like this Sith machine is omnipresent. And there are just, I don't know, an unnamed number of them there to back Palpatine up. And of course the intimidation, I'm sure, is part of it, like on purpose. So good old Sheev is being supported by an Omen harness, which I haven't seen much in Star Wars, to be honest. I feel like this may have been the first time that it has shown up. According to Wikipedia, it's also in Battle. Oh, it's mentioned in Battlefront 2. But yeah, it seems like it is mainly a Rise of Skywalker thing. Yeah, I find it very interesting. It is like it's a type of cybernetic dedicated to providing a frail individual with increased maneuverability. It just, yeah, like
it's used frequently for like worm species or species that like don't really have legs.
Oh, is it?
Sometimes. Is that a thing? Have I
don't
seen
know.
things like that? Or maybe I'm thinking more of like kind of a chair type thing.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah, I
That
have an
whole
image
thing
on screen.
is the item. So yeah, you can only have one if you have a giant auditorium and wish to be moved around like a spotlight or something.
Yeah, like I
feels
want
very
to know.
Theatrical.
It does look very theatrical, and I'm like wondering, could that thing be smaller? Why are there so many wires hanging from it? It just
could definitely be smaller.
Unless there's like other things that could be restrained or something. I guess maybe it's to accommodate different types of life forms, but yeah, the design of it is very interesting, and I don't know that I've ever seen exactly what it comes out of. Like we just see the very end part of it.
Yeah, it's disturbing.
Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah. Well, and I bet it's very expensive. So I bet like not everyone can afford that who needs it.
Yeah, not the most accessible technology.
Yeah.
Especially being Sith made.
Okay, so this
is
very interesting.
I mean, it would have to be.
Okay, well, it was made by a Sith king, yes, named Amin.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's described as a mechanical spine in one spot. Yeah, so I think maybe the intimidating design is probably part of it, actually, and now I'm convinced of that.
Yeah, it was totally unnecessary. Yeah. You could have just used a stronger metal. They have spaceships. They have alloys that are very, very, very strong and very, very small.
It's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so this very interesting musical moment now. Let's go back to it. I'll go a little bit back.
The Sith are reborn. The Jedi are dead. Do it! Make the sacrifice.
Looks like she's going to do it.
I would stop there.
Yeah. And
there's plenty to talk about.
There's so much.
Right?
Yeah. There's plenty to talk about for sure. I feel like it looked like she was about to do it, like strike him down, but then the lightsaber disappears. Kylo gets it. Ben gets it. Yeah, so, okay, what do we have to say about this very interesting moment?
Yeah, I mean, would you say that that's the little twinkly notes that first come into the silence that begin the transition into this magical moment? I would call them magical twinklies, but also childlike twinklies. I don't typically associate them with Force music necessarily.
With Force music?
Not necessarily. Like I wouldn't say they're explicitly like a Force thing. I would call them like twinkly child magic. And what I hear is high harp strings. I also hear either. Are you like, which percussion instruments would we be hearing? Would that be like celeste, xylophone, or?
Yeah, it might be glockenspiel. I don't.
Or glockenspiel. Yeah.
I mean, it does remind me a little bit of in A New Hope when Luke first finds Ben Kenobi, and it's like, and it's hello there. It does. There are twinklies there as well. So I do kind of associate it with the Force, but I also do associate it with kind of like a childlikeness. And here emotionally it felt almost like we were going to go into a flashback or something, because Rey did have a lot of flashbacks in this film, and where it kind of like focuses on her face and time kind of stops in some sort of way. So it almost felt like she was going to go internal. Like, I think it's, it's like her going inside of her mind is also what it feels like.
Yeah, I like that. Totally. The other strong component is the soundtrack was competing with the breathing sounds from both Rey and Ben. I thought that was interesting and effective.
Yeah. I mean, they're breathing, and of course, like the camera showing their faces. Like, we obviously know that this is a moment between them, but I feel like there's something about the breathing that makes it register more that they are sensing each other. And that could also be due to all of the legwork in the previous, in the rest of this film and in the last film, where they do have their like Force Skype moments where we do know that they can connect with each other through the Force. The breathing makes it feel more rooted in the body, I think. And I think that's something that this film does more than The Last Jedi, where I feel like in The Last Jedi, it's mostly in their mind, that they do touch hands at some point. But in this film, it's very much like he can rip the beads off of her, and they can definitely they're definitely much more comfortable being able to touch and sense things in each other's environment. And so by the time we get here, where it's like we're laying the groundwork for her to transfer her lightsaber to him, which is kind of a big move. That's a big move to make. It is more believable because of all the stuff that we've already had. And the breathing kind of just makes it feel like it's not just music and the visuals of their faces. It's like rooted in something in their bodies. It feels more tangible.
Absolutely. I think breathing is often used in particularly intimate scenes. I would connect intimacy with breathing from a sound design perspective.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I would too, for sure. And I believe this is the first time Rey is sensing him as Ben, not Kylo.
Oh yeah, I think it is. Yes, in the book version where let's see.
It's been a long time since I've read this book.
Yeah, I have it pulled up. Oh my gosh. There's a lot here that isn't in the movie, surprisingly, despite the fact that it's made from the movie. It says that she lifted her lightsaber as if to strike and reached for the connection she shared with Ben, showed him. He acknowledged her, and Rey's lips parted in surprise. It felt different now. The connection was right, good, like coming home. Ben was similarly stunned, and together they wasted a precious moment reveling in this new sharing. This is how it should have been all along, a true dyad.
Wow. I mean, we do see him do a little nod.
All of that.
Yeah. I want to know which is the moment also, that they, what's the extra second that they waste?
Is it, I can see it. It's like Palpatine is immediately right now realizing what's going on, and you need to defend yourself because he's very scary. I don't know. I guess that moment.
Yeah. Rey's definitely wasting time here.
Before that, this is a bit much to read all of, but so what's going through, and as far as I can tell, the movie did not communicate this, because one of the reasons I was even interested in reading the books was like, what was going on? Like, what was literally happening? But I guess while Palpatine is third person narrating her actions, all of a sudden he gets so since he is convinced that he's winning, he stops protecting his thoughts, and she's able to perceive everything that he has been thinking. And there are 2 whole pages, iPhone book wise, of
her like reading his thoughts.
Yeah, of her reading his thoughts, and how, and it starts interestingly. It's like falling down a massive shaft. The betrayal sharp and stinging. Oh yeah, so I guess that's Palpatine falling after Darth Vader throws him in that shaft. And then either way, and then like the history of him with Plagueis, and then all the tragic cloning, attempts, like all of the obnoxious cloning that the Sith and he were working on. He calls them the Sith heretics. And he had like a son, but he was useless, powerless failure. Palpatine could not even bear to look upon such disappointing ordinariness. Mm-hmm. The boy's only worth would lay in continuing the bloodline through more natural methods. And it was through that eventual union, unexpected as it was, that Rey was born, the perfect vessel, strong enough to contain all the power of the Sith, his granddaughter. So all of that happens in her head during this scene and is uncommunicated to the audience.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I don't think that was communicated.
It's a pretty big flaw of the movie.
Do you think it's a flaw of the movie? Do you think it makes a difference?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
I think it makes a difference. I was like, I do not get what's going on logically, and so I have to pretend that logic doesn't exist and just go with whatever I see, which is just kind of not I'm pretty willing to throw logic away, actually, in a movie, and I feel like even I thought that took it too far. I think that should have been more explicitly stated. And if that was happening here, there should have been a flashback. Maybe there was a flashback scene. And remember when you were like, oh, maybe the twinklies, she was going to have a flashback. Maybe they were about to do that and they cut it from the film. I don't know.
Well, would it have been a flashback, or would it have been like more like seeing into Palpatine's mind?
Yeah. But it would have been a flash.
But what would that have added? What would it have made? Did you have trouble buying the fact that she wanted to defeat Palpatine, or was it something else? Like, what would that knowledge have aided you in understanding?
I guess that would have helped me understand the Skywalker Palpatine bloodline dichotomy, like playing out the idea that, what we're really seeing is this really long feudal battle between Skywalkers and Palpatines, between
Ben being the Skywalker,
dark side and light, and Rey being the Palpatine. I think that if that had been more clear, this moment would have been the movie itself would have been more successful, because the whole movie, the title of the movie is Rise of Skywalker. And I think what it kind of is trying to say is Rise of Skywalker as the fall of Palpatine. Like the rise of Skywalker in relation to Palpatine. That's how I see it. I don't really see it as like Rey didn't she grew. For sure Rey grew during this, but it wasn't like more than in other movies that she was in. So yeah, I feel like that's what the Rise of Skywalker is like, Skywalker rose over Palpatine in this one, in this battle that's been waged over the last centuries.
Yeah. I mean, well, I guess the feudal battle only goes 2 generations at most, probably, with Anakin.
Does it though? I feel like
with Anakin and Palpatine. Because first of all,
I was wondering though if the Skywalker bloodline had been traced for some reason. I need to research that. I forgot to check up on that.
Yeah, I don't know, because supposedly Anakin was conceived by the midichlorians, but then also Palpatine could have had an influence in that. But I do think Rise of Skywalker makes sense on multiple levels, but I do think it would have been I think it would have been a cool connection to be more explicitly thinking about Vader and Palpatine at the end of Return of the Jedi. I think that that would have been cool. Personally, I don't think it would have significantly made me understand the movie more, but it would have added a cool extra layer for me, for sure. But I also am of the opinion that Anakin Skywalker should have been there talking to Ben on the ledge instead of Han Solo. Because I think I wanted to see more of that intergenerational, like, because especially since Kylo Ren like worshipped his grandfather as Darth Vader, but never seemed to like know him as Anakin Skywalker. And I wanted Anakin Skywalker, like the light side Anakin Skywalker, to be able to connect with his grandson, instead of just like Kylo holding this image of Darth Vader in such high regard. Like I doubted through this whole trilogy whether Kylo even knew that that Vader turned back to the light side in the end. And I thought Anakin would have maybe like, I don't know, either he could have learned that in this movie or something else. But again, I think it was also fine that it was his dad. That also made sense thematically and was a callback to The Force Awakens. It's just like I did have a brief moment when it was like, "Hey, kid." I mean, we're going back to an older, like a previous scene, but that's okay. Like when Han Solo goes like, "Hey, kid," I just with those two words, I couldn't tell who it was yet. So I was like, "Oh, is it Hayden Christensen? Is it going to be Anakin?" And then it wasn't, but it was fine. But I kind of do still wish it were Anakin.
Yeah, like what we got from Anakin in Ahsoka, when she's like unconscious under in the ocean.
Yeah, goes to the
that
world
is
between
what
worlds.
We could have gotten with Ben Solo, and that would have definitely connected this whole Skywalker dynasty thing. Because I've never, like, I don't know, like I know why it is that I think the Skywalkers go back really far.
Okay,
You know
why? Why? Oh, I know why. I know why. Why did I even ask? We made it
because if the Chiss call their Force-sensitive Skywalkers, there must have been a Skywalker back in the day, pre-Chia, or pre the Sith son, or no, I'm sorry, pre the Chiss son, Sith son, going cold. So that's a long time ago.
Yeah, long time ago. Long time.
Yeah, during the Sith Wars. I assume it was during the Sith Wars. So, yeah, that's fine. Thrawn.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. We'll probably get a book about it at some point.
Hopefully so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Shall I?
So we got the. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was going to say, shall I continue playing? But by all means, say what you were going to say.
I was actually totally I was transitioning us as well back into the playing.
Cool. So.
Make the sacrifice.
I love that moment right there. I love that moment just with the low strings and the lightsabers turning on at the same time and the same general range of each other pitch-wise. That's really nice.
And the lightsaber sounds so... Okay, so Ben's lightsaber sound also sounds really thick, I think. Like it sounds very thick to me.
That is it's a thick saber sound.
Indeed. Yeah, that's what's happening there. And of course we heard the Force theme before that.
Do it.
Here.
Make the sacrifice.
The low brass.
The sacrifice.
Rey looks determined as she raises her lightsaber above and behind her head. And then it sounds even thicker when Ben opens it. It's like, oh yeah, I can't do it. It's like, which I think it's the same lightsaber. So I think, but I guess he was igniting it, whereas she was just moving it. So wait, was he igniting it? No, he's not igniting it. It sounds,
because it's also Luke's saber is the one that Ben is turning on. because it's Luke's saber.
And then
that she
Rey's going to
transfers.
use Leia's.
So there is no Ben saber.
Right, because he threw his red saber into the sea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's without a weapon now. But his own saber had such also like a thick sound, like an out of control sound. And so I think it's interesting that like him using this blue saber sounds more powerful than it does when we hear other people using it, I feel. But that could be a proximity thing, but like I wonder if it's like also a Ben using it thing. I don't know. I'm not actually making
I would not be
a
surprised.
lore proposal, but subjectively, it
I would
felt
not
very
be
loud.
surprised if the overall sound direction regarding doing sound design for Ben Solo and or Kylo was just any sounds, make them heavier. Because his fighting style is very heavy. Everything about, I can't, for some reason, I haven't been able to think of the actor's name who plays
Adam Driver.
Ben Solo. Adam Driver. Adam Driver has a very, he's just like there's a lot of big, heavy weight going on with when he fights and things. His fighting style is much more like, I'm going to bludgeon you, not I'm going to quickly slash. Yeah, his fighting style is not like Yoda's, for example, which is all about speed and spinning. And nor is it even like there's another big dude, Mace Windu. It's not like Mace's fighting style either. His is really, I would almost say like it reminds me of, almost like King Arthur days kinds of fighting, where it's like, I've got this huge heavy sword and I'm going to wield its weight and grab your face. At one point, he kills one of the Knights of Ren by just grabbing his face and throwing the dude onto the ground. That's how that guy dies.
It sucks to be him.
That's pretty brutal. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, oh, well, let's do that with the lightsaber sounds too, and make them also kind of, which follows the plot. I mean, in terms of Star Wars, isn't the idea that the different Jedi channel their own energy through the saber? So
yeah, for sure. And different fighting styles like suit different kinds of Jedi personalities and proclivities.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. Wait, that was a really funny sound. Very buzzy, like. There's Rey's theme, because we're also cutting, back and forth. Rey is fighting different types of guards. What are their names? Their names are...
I specifically looked in the book to find what they were, and they were not mentioned. But aren't they called they're like Palpatine's special death... Like, they're beyond Death Troopers.
Yeah.
But they're also beyond... I don't think they're Inquisitors, though.
No, I have the name somewhere in my notes. What are they called? They're called something. They look like Praetorian Guards, but they're not that. That was from The Last Jedi. They are...
Throne Room Guards?
Stand by. They are... Sovereign Protectors. That's what they are.
Sovereign Protectors. I'll write that down.
Yeah. And then we do hear the really bad feeling motif, which is... I know, it's a great name, right?
What's our time cue right now where you're playing?
1:49.
Cool.
Yeah, so really bad feeling is, I'll put it up on screen. Let's see. It's going to be kind of grainy screenshot, probably. Okay, this is a screenshot from Frank Lehman's catalog, of course. Strident motif that occurs on a few occasions in TROS, most notably 5M8 cut and momentarily during the Rey Ben team up on Exegol. Possibly tracked and octave shifted, related to tension, force, Psalm of the Sith, and insidious minor figure. And what it is and it's related to tension because the tension motif is like basically the same thing. Yeah. So just pointing that one out there. I'll go back a little bit. There it was.
Mm-hmm.
Rey. I like that.
Yeah, they love those. Like, I call it like hopeful wins, and that was what I was talking about earlier when I was pointing out that I think the sound design, or no, the orchestration was very closely related to the fighting, because it was almost like every time Ben succeeded in doing something, they had that little. I thought I noticed a correlation there where it was very on the nose, just in the sense like every time he makes progress, also something kind of high and positive sounding happens. I don't know if that was an accident, but I feel like if it's that clearly correlated, it's not.
Yeah, I feel like in the midst of like this obvious like action cue, there are little signs that are kind of like a little referee going like, I'm bad at sports analogies. So what do referees say? I don't know, but they're saying like, good job. They're not saying good job. Okay. They're saying point. They're saying like foul. I don't know what they're saying.
Right.
But there's like, or okay, the crowd is maybe doing like little reactions to little things. Like maybe it's not like a goal, but maybe the crowd still like in a game will be like, oh, or like, when they see their player start to do something good, or, do a good block. I don't stop me now. Yeah.
I'm really pleased that I have a specific sports thing to bring in later on. One of the clips that I sent you is like a football game.
Oh, that's right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I knew that neither of us would know enough about it to be able to describe it. We need a direct audio.
Yeah, and like the problem with me in sports is that I'm not devoted to any one sport, team sport at least. I like gymnastics. But so when I talk about sports, my mind is like doing a soccer analogy, and that's switching to baseball, and then it's switching to football, and it's switching to basketball, because I know a little bit about a lot of sports. But in my mind, sports as a concept is like one thing almost. And so I can't keep my analogy like very consistent. I'm like saying a baseball. Oh yeah, it's bad. I should just like learn one sport really well and then always use that sport as for analogies. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that comes in a future season, listeners. Tell me which sport you think it should be. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's happening. And on an earlier episode, actually in Empire Strikes Back season, I talked to Connor Power, and we were talking about how in the Battle of Hoth, in Empire, the music kind of keeps the score in a way. Because like there's, action stuff that is working for all of the action, but then there's also like a little fanfare, and then there's like a little thing that it kind of is like, oh, the Empire got a point. Oh, the Rebels got a point. And so this reminds me of that, where it, yeah. And I think it's very helpful because I struggle in action sequences to be able to correctly interpret all the moves that are happening. So to be able to hear little signs of like, oh, the heroes are doing something good, then it helps me comprehend the scene as a whole, and makes me feel less bad if I like check out and miss something visually. At least there's something auditorially that can still bolster my understanding.
Yeah, and that absolutely should be the case, since I feel like the point of film is to bring together audio and visual and something else and other arts. But yeah, that's the point, is that it's multiple things.
Totally. So. And then I'm going to start playing again, and about 5 seconds in, we're going to hear a stab as Ben does a stab. So it's going to be, yeah. Right there. The you hear the lightsaber just a little bit before.
Yeah, totally.
But it is doing that thing. Right there. So the flute, the part that I wrote, okay, my notes for that part that we just heard just go. Yeah, because that's what that sounds
Nice.
like, the flute. And yeah, the little filigree, just really fast runs. Right into Rey. And we haven't actually heard this particular Rey's theme in a long time. We normally hear, and what we heard before was da 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 da. But here we're getting the chimes version of Rey's theme. So that's cool to hear.
Yeah, and I love when they have, I call it open feeling, the same thing I was describing earlier, where they have that either, I feel like it's not really, it could be doubled at the octave, but just where there's parallel movement between different instruments. I think that's really effective.
On the chimes theme?
I feel like it's played there maybe like with the brass doing the lower note, but then they just put like some lightweight things up top, parallel movementing, and that I always like the feeling of that.
Okay, wait, I want to hear that again now. Yeah, in many ways I think there's almost like a pedal tone or something.
Right. A pedal tone creating oblique motion.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. We've explained oblique.
Love that oblique.
We've explained the kinds of motion on a band batch stream, but maybe we should hear on this podcast.
We could.
Yeah. So, Christina, oblique. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to. Where does one even start with this? Okay, so there's types when there are two voices, musically speaking, and you're describing the way that these two lines are moving. You talk about them in terms of motion. What kind of motion are they doing?
In relation to each other.
Yeah. So parallel motion is like kind of what it sounds like if you're skiing and you have like skis and you're kind of like, I don't know, here's another sports thing. Exactly. You're probably moving your skis kind of parallel to each other. I don't know. Skiers, I don't know. Maybe that's not true. It is from like cartoons.
Actually, skiing is a good example of that, but we could just say there's two skis and they're parallel to each other. Mm-hmm. And if that were two notes that were all moving the same direction consistently, that would be parallel movement. They both go left, they both go right, they both go right again, they both go up and down, they straighten out.
So like,
but so now we can hear
I'll demonstrate
that.
Yes, so I will play a fifth.
Please don't do that.
And this is a perfect fifth. And so if we're moving in parallel motion, then the top and bottom note are always going to be a perfect fifth apart. Yeah. And okay, so like in the Rebel fanfare, there's a lot of parallel motion. Parallel is on the podcast. Sometimes I use the word planing instead. That means the same thing. Parallel and planing motion. There's a lot of that in Star Wars, especially like in fanfares, where sometimes it'll be like a whole triad, like moving 2 or 3 lines, like especially brass, moving in parallel motion. And in the Rebel fanfare, that is moving in parallel motion. Those are planing triads.
Mm-hmm. And then the next type of motion I feel like that's easy to demonstrate is the contrary motion. Mm-hmm. So if you're thinking about the skis are either pointed towards each other so that they're getting closer together as they move forward, or they're pointed away from each other so that they move away from each other as you move forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So parallel motion would be like, contrary motion would be like,
mm-hmm. And then there's the oblique motion, which is where you have one that's staying straight, staying neither left nor right, neither up nor down, but straight, and one that is moving up and down, therefore increasing or decreasing the distance between those notes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like growing up, going to church, there would be like one chanter person doing the drone notes. This is a Greek Orthodox church, so it's like one going, and then someone doing like a, like kind of a melismatic type of chant above it, but one person is doing drones basically. And so in the car, my brother and I would do that for fun, where one of us would just like sing a low note and the other person would solo on it on top of it. That's oblique motion.
That's cute.
Yeah.
That's cute.
Yeah. So there's the little lesson on types of motion in music. And Rey's theme is kind of doing a little bit of oblique motion. Here we go. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for helping me with that explanation. It's always good to bring up. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I shall keep playing. So much just happened in such a short time. Okay.
It did.
Yeah. It's moving like I feel like it's channel changing kind of quickly. I mean, it sounds synchronous and fine, but like there is still a lot happening. Like, because after the chimes theme, we have this very brief heroic thing that is. That.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like it like the tempo changes, like it seems to come out of nowhere, and it's after it's like as Rey is force pushing some of the sovereign protectors away and revealing Kylo.
Mm-hmm.
So it is like a kind of heroic moment, but it is like, oh, okay, we got to put in something, and then we go right into the redeemed Kylo Ren theme, and then into Rey's theme very quickly.
Stand together, die together.
All about the sound design right there.
Yeah, and it's very aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's tactily upsetting.
It is tactily upsetting. I'm going to put some images on screen. So first of all, like, here's Rey and Ben both facing together. And then we see them start to get lifted like a rag doll, like rag dolls, basically. Yeah, Palpatine looking at his hands. And yeah, they're getting kind of rocked right now. It's reminiscent of The Last Jedi when Snoke kind of does a similar thing to Rey. Yeah, a big show of intimidation and a loss of control. Like, like Rey and Ben have lost control of their bodies. They're kind of at the mercy of whatever Palpatine's going to do. They're kind of just like the rag dolls here. Very scary.
Yeah. In the book, it goes so far as to say that Palpatine pierced them with the Force, and that it was so horrifically painful that they dropped their sabers.
Oh.
And then he pulls them. I don't know if that's just the person reading into it, but that sounds even worse than what we already thought. So
yeah, it's very bad. When the music kind of subsides and we just hear their lightsabers drop.
Stand together.
It's a little bit before that.
stand together, die together.
There. It's like those lightsabers are, I feel like it sounds like they're dropping twice, but I guess it's 2 lightsabers. It's like a very emphasized
two, and then
lightsaber
they're
drop.
rolling on the rocky ground.
Oh, true. Yeah.
But it's very, I mean, they could have orchestrated or mixed that way further back in the mix, but I think that it's way more effective that it's here. It's like silence, and we're dropping the lightsabers and all of this that we've seen, all of this cool stuff. Now he just has them.
Right. And I mean, also when using something like the Force without a lightsaber, like you're just using the Force, and you have to sell that moment. You have to sell that power with sound and with, of course, appropriately timed kinetics. The first season of this show, I did an episode with Justin Scheid, and we had a scene where we got to talk a lot about like the different sounds of the Force being used. Yeah, so very gnarly, like Force pushing right here. Like it almost sounds like blowing out your speakers or something.
Yeah, and if you're listening in headphones, I think you wouldn't be able to hear it unless you have either a really well stereoed sound system at your house or wherever it is that you watch, or if you're listening in headphones, the panning was super accurate there. So you actually hear the Force sound move with Rey's and Ben's bodies from the right side to the left side. That was pretty effective, and it was something I definitely noticed depending on how I listened.
Yeah, well, let's take a listen to that again.
Stand together, die together. The life force of your bond.
Okay, before we get there, I just want to call attention to the line, stand together, die together. Have you watched Lost, Christina? Okay.
I only know about it.
Okay. I've been doing a Lost rewatch, and so this has been coming up too much this season. I'm sorry. But there's like a line that is repeated throughout Lost, which is like, live together, die alone. And I think the reason that I've been thinking about Lost, especially in this movie, is because, like, first of all, Charlie from Lost is in this movie. And of course, it's J.J. Abrams who did Lost. And there are little things that like remind me of Lost. And I don't necessarily think it's like, oh, JJ's trying to put Lost references. But this is now hilarious after just having watched a lot of episodes of Lost over the past few months, where they're like, live together, die alone. And he's like, stand together, die together. Because it sounds like a twisted play on the more inspiring rhetoric from Lost. And then I was thinking of like making a Punnett square for like all the different options, like stay together, die together, stay together, die alone, die together, stand, like whatever. Except in Lost, live together, die alone, I think is presenting 2 options, either live together or die alone. Whereas in this one, stand together, die together, it's more like choice and consequence. If you stand together, you will die together. It's not like an option, either stand together or die together. It's like these 2 things are both happening. So yeah.
That's a hopeful perspective.
Yeah. So hopeful.
I assumed it meant stand together, but when everyone dies, they die alone. It doesn't matter whether you were together or not.
That's true.
But that's...
live together and then you die alone.
Not the Jedi
that's
way.
True. Yeah, it's definitely not the Jedi way. I mean, and also this is a threat for sure. It's like a dare.
Stand together. And it's creepy the way you hear his nasty breath right before that. It brings that bodily intimacy where you're like, oh, he's sort of like breathed in their bodies. Yeah, it was creepy.
Yeah. And as we continue okay, I'll keep playing. This is going to be a long and excruciating sequence, and I'm going to put some images on screen.
A dyad in the Force, a power like life itself, unseen for generations, and now the power of two restores the one true Emperor.
Okay, there's gonna be a lot. There's gonna be a lot here. So I got the
so
most flattering screenshots.
You did really well with that. That was
Thank you.
gruesome to look at.
Thank you.
Oh,
So here we're seeing a close up. He's like noticing that they're a dyad in the Force because I think he perhaps didn't know that until this moment. I think.
that's what
And
the
you
book says.
Okay, good. So you see, like he's
Yeah,
missing,
it says that he accidentally
fingers
found it out.
through just feeling their energy.
Yeah, I think when he pulled on them, I guess he sucked some of their energy into himself and
Right.
tasted them. That's how I wrote it. He like tasted them to see what it would be like to absorb them.
That sounds cannibalistic.
Yeah, it's it's accurate, unfortunately.
Yeah. So here we have we see his fingers are like, half of them are like little nubs. There's like one that looks like a carrot. An upside down
There
carrot.
is, and there's one where there's space. Yeah, that's awful.
But then he starts sucking their life force, and wow, look, his hands are just 4 seconds later, they are regenerated. And honestly, it's a pretty massive hand glow up.
Yeah, manicured even.
Yeah, he went out his way to like have really nice hands after that. And then the power of two restores the one true emperor. So obviously the power of two has new significance or new connotations now since the acolyte has had the whole power of two thing. I think they're meant to be two different kinds of power of two. Like, because I don't think Osha and whatever the other one's name is, I can't remember. May. Osha and May. I don't think they're meant to be a dyad. They're meant to be, the lore is kind of sketchy, but I think they're meant to be like the same consciousness or something. And so here Kylo and Rey are
they're
a
like
dyad.
a fake dyad.
They're like a different kind of power couple. Like, I don't know.
Rey and Ben are like a real dyad, not a synthesized dyad. Engineered.
Right.
Kind of like, yeah.
But I just do think it is very confusing that the same description of them, like I think just using power of two for both of them is a little bit confusing, but I think it's fine, but it's a little confusing.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
They overdid it in the Acolyte, and so it kind of is one of those things where for a while I'll be annoyed hearing about anything to do with the power of two. But in just I ate too many of that food and now I don't want any of that. It's kind of that way. I did read that not from an Acolyte perspective, just from a Sith lore perspective, the Dyad in the Force was the original inspiration for the rule of two, in the sense that I got the impression from reading about it that the master and apprentice are meant to try to be a dyad themselves. That's kind of the idea, is to try to find someone who's equally as powerful as you so that you can be a dyad together.
A dyad? Interesting.
Be dyad-ish together, I guess that's a better way to say it.
To me, a dyad implies equality.
Doesn't make sense.
Right. A dyad to me implies a greater sense of equality than master and apprentice.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seems to me to be it does not make sense to me, but I'm sure someone could explain it to me in a way that makes sense.
I'm willing to hear.
To send messages to Xanthi, who can then send them to me.
Sounds good. All right, so I will be Christina's secretary. No. Yeah, it sounds a little bit like, you know what? I want to have a kid so I can have a new best friend or something.
Oh gosh. Yeah, it is a lot like that. But yeah, the Sith power of two isn't great and never was that great, as we can historically see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like
all
selfishness
kill
was
their
always part of it.
masters.
Yeah. It was
the
like a
whole thing.
requirement.
Like, let me adopt this person whose only goal is to kill me and take what I have.
Yeah, and that's somehow that's somehow the only way to continue the Sith. When it seems like you run the risk of really running out of people if you're truly only keeping to anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, so we get the power of 2 stuff, and let's see, where are we in the life force of your bond? Okay, I'll keep playing. Okay, actually, I have some additional notes about the other thing, which is like the type of sound design that is going on.
Life itself, unseen for generations, and now the power of 2 restores the 1.
Okay, so there's like that intense thrumming in the background where it's like almost sounds like the Death Star telemetry sounds, but like really amplified. And then also it kind of sounds underwater, kind of cavernous in parts.
Yeah, I feel like I only hear reverb like that. I would call it almost reverb. Or that's what I would say it is. I could be wrong, but it sounds to me like it's reverb. But you only see reverbs like that when you're clicking on like super unnatural, ridiculous reverbs. It's not like in the forest or in recording studio or even in a cathedral. It's like in the biggest airline hangar that exists, or at the bottom of the sea in a submarine, or it's very weird. And it changed between when he was talking about power unseen for generations. By the time he says restores the one true emperor, the reverb has been cut and the sound is much more present. So I guess it does kind of convey this broadening of the historical scope for a moment. Sort of. It's like he's talking about unseen for generations. Power like life itself.
Yeah.
He himself is awestruck. And so it's almost like he's allowing his voice to just do some kind of weird thing. And then he's like, no, now we're coming back to me, the one true emperor.
Yeah.
And I just want to be clear that it's
back to me. Back to me and right now. Yeah. Okay, so then this music that we're about to get.
Emperor.
So arpeggios, right? It's like they're going up a half step. Etc. Which is like basically the mystery motif that is in, especially in Attack of the Clones, like when we're approaching Camino and stuff. I'll put on screen. Herrmann-esque arpeggio patterns pervasive through the Attack of the Clones score. So like the like kind of prototypical.
Is that Herrmann as in like Bernard Herrmann, the film score? Very
cool. When we're approaching Camino. But then this form 2, which is what this one is, which is a more straight up minor arpeggio add 6. So 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then often modulating by a half step. So that's what we're hearing there.
And so that is considered Herrmann-esque.
I mean, according to Frank Lehman, like he's describing it there are similar things to this in Bernard Herrmann's scores. And the thing is, like, I kind of actually doubt that John Williams is thinking, I'm going to put the mystery motif here. I think he's just like minor triads ascending or descending by a half step will be effective here. And then
totally.
Yeah.
And that also connects to Herrmann's grandfather, like what's going to say it? Like, how deeply his musical language is embedded in music, in film scoring in the United States. Because when he moved here to the United States, he immediately started scoring a bunch of silent movie films and some of the early films. And so just a lot of what exists for the birth of film was scored by Herrmann.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess in some way, it's kind of like how we think, oh, that sounds like a major scale, because it is a major scale, because we've heard so many major scales.
Right. Because it evokes that
maybe Herrmann-esque. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in some ways, Herrmann's music is so deeply embedded in our film score culture that that you can't even distinguish it from just normal things. Like, well, of course, minor arpeggios, duh.
Herrmann-esque. Yeah, and also it might be something. It also might be something beyond just what the music is. It might be the way that Herrmann uses it in the context of the scene. Like this kind of action gets
that was
this
the
kind
other
of thing.
thing. Yes, I think wasn't that the other kind of major quality about Herrmann's music was that I think he might have been the guy who first wrote I think he produced a songbook of music where it's like, oh, if you're the organist or pianist accompanying a silent horror film and the scene is creepy, this is the creepy music that you play. And if the scene is a love scene, this is the love music that you play. And this is a horror scene, this is the horror music that you play. And they were just flipping around according to flipping through this book according to what that was. I think that was Herrmann.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know for sure. I mean, I know that those existed which is why you would get a lot of the same music performed for different silent films, because organists did have this kind of reference book that they could pull from.
Totally.
You might be right. I actually would like to know. I mean, I got the sense that multiple people probably contributed to such a book, and that there were probably several of them. But and actually, it occurs to me that I'd be really interested to see one of those books, to have one of them. I want to know what the cheat sheets are, what the cheat sheet says for old timey silent films for organists.
That would be great. We need that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think I've heard that a lot of earlier film music, in the, once talkies were a thing, or, the early film scores, golden age of cinema in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
I feel who was it? Was it Korngold or someone else who his first score or something, he didn't even think that he should be called composer. He was just wanted to be called as arranger or something. And that could have been because of the stigma, maybe, but it could also have been that he felt like he was just doing the job that one does when you're being an organist and you're just picking appropriate selections. And he probably was referencing a lot of things that were just from those books, probably. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I shouldn't have opened the webpage and tried to learn about Herrmann. Yes, yes, Korngold, when he was in, I guess I'll just call it Germany, Austria, Poland, prior to World War II, before he had to move to the United States. He was not there. There has always been this kind of difference between the quality of film score composers and academic composers who are, and he was an academic composer in Europe until he had to move here. And then it was no one knows you or cares. It was just it's that thing where you're famous somewhere, you have to leave and start somewhere else. Yeah. I feel like there might have been some, I don't know what I'm going to call it. Yeah, it's a hard word to nail down.
I'm seeing with Korngold, when he composed Captain Blood in 1935, he had a really short time frame to compose music, 3 weeks for an hour of music. So he did use bits of symphonic poems by Franz Liszt. And a couple of engaging cues were written by Korngold orchestrator Milan Roeder. I don't know. So Korngold insisted that he be credited only with musical adaptations, even though he scored nearly the entire film with original music. But it's because he didn't because he used some Liszt, and then his orchestrator also wrote a little bit. But today, that is so common. you have
exactly. Yeah.
other people writing stuff for you too. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if back in the day that was not so common. I don't know.
I don't know.
Or maybe it's a difference between European and American sensibilities as well.
I'm not sure.
That could be a factor.
Yeah. How did we get on that topic? Oh, yeah, the arpeggios. Yeah, okay. So there's minor arpeggios happening.
Herrmann-esque arpeggios.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, so let's get to the end of the arpeggios. So what we're hearing now is it swiftly transitioned us to the other side of the scene, which is, the starfighters, Poe, the pilot people. But I failed to put more gruesome images on screen. So let's see. So here we see like Palpatine being held up by the harness with his arms extended, shooting lightning at our two heroes on their knees, and they're kind of like sticking their chests out and they're getting zapped there.
Oh wait, he's not shooting lightning at them. He's sucking out their.
He's sucking out their life force. That's right. He's sucking out their life force. The sound effect
was really good. It was like a combination of screams and like air moving through vacuum space, maybe something like that. Like a lot of. It's pretty good sound.
Totally. And then here we're going to see their faces looking very, I don't know, almost Force ghosty. It looks like their essence is being sucked away from them. It's like all misty. And then we see their collapse. They've collapsed. Before we move on to a very different part of the scene, which is like where Poe et al. Are, I want to make sure that we talk about the vocal deliveries that take place in these minutes. And also the assorted other clips that you sent me. So perhaps what feels like a better place to start for you?
I think the best thing to show first is just the screenshot I sent of my notes, where it just shows what Palpatine is saying and some analysis that I wrote about it.
Yeah, so this is actually so funny. These are amazing notes. Christina has transcribed Palpatine's, his dialogue. She will draw her weapon. She will come to me. She will take her revenge. But, and I know not everyone watches this on YouTube, so I will try to remember to also post these screenshots on social media. But she's written it basically in music notation with some rhythms defined, and with the lyrics, written underneath the note heads. Because, I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, because he actually is really true to a rhythmic structure the whole time he's talking. And it usually fits in with, it doesn't fit directly in with the music behind it, but it fits with the music behind it. It might not be directly connected to the music behind it, but it fits. So and he starts with, he kind of groups, I noted that the first two lines are like their own little couplet. He says them, and then there's an interlude. So she will draw her weapon. She will come to me. This is very much in 2. I don't hear this as in 3, whereas all the rest of it I hear in 3.
So can you clap where the beats are? Like in 2?
Yeah, so she will draw her weapon.
Okay.
She will come to me.
Yep, okay. Why don't I play this so that we can compare? Okay.
She will draw her weapon. She will come to me.
Yeah, you're right. Rhythmically, those rhyme for sure.
Totally, yeah. They have kind of a couplet feel, and of course he is. I do think he's resonating in a performative way. So there is, if this had been an opera, it could reasonably be written out in notation. I think. it's not so different from a lot of similar points in opera, which I tried to find some good examples, but I didn't find any that I thought were closely related enough to where you wouldn't have to make a lot of leaps of judgment to see the similarity.
Yeah, and can you explain why this might be written out and maybe talk about, speak singing? I'm not going to say the German word.
So up at the top left of my screenshot, I wrote 2 words in German. One is Sprechstimme, and the other is Sprechgesang. And Sprech means speak, and Stimme means voice. Gesang, I think, means singing. Or song. So it's basically this idea that it's always been relevant, whereas the border between speaking and singing. But in the 1930s, 40s, in the mid-early 1900s, it became important for composers to actually specify where this line between speaking and singing was. Prior to that, you would have, I think,
recitative.
Traditionally, So recitative is a common part of operatic singing where, like, let's say Mary Had a Little Lamb or maybe we'll do Mary Had a Little Lamb is our song, and I'm gonna say that the first little phrase is actually written like Mary had a little lamb. But then if the character was actually supposed to just kind of think about that for a while, it would change to recitative. So it would be like, his fleece was white as snow, his fleece was white as snow, Mary had a little lamb, his fleece was white as snow. It's too similar to the speech to be written out in notation. Does that kind of come across, the difference between those, between regular singing and recitative?
Kind of. I'm also thinking is recitative also in when there clearly is a pitch, I'm thinking in Mozart and stuff, where it's singing, and then it's wait, I need to go da 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 da. And
so maybe the 3 pitches listed would be da 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 da. Those 3 pitches might be notated, and then just the words would follow. It would be kind of squeeze all of these words into this pitch.
Right.
And it's often very reasonable to slide up and down between the pitches too, especially if it's not something nice, if it's something like a character, and is a character talking about death or but I want to kill you. It can kind of fade into something that's not so musical.
So then would you say that recitative is a predecessor to Sprechstimme? I don't know if I'm saying that right.
I would almost say that people came up with the idea of recitative, and then it became insufficient to explain insufficient for certain things. And so it was used. Recitative was still popular when Verdi was composing. He's much older than a lot of what we're talking about with the 1920s. Verdi was sometimes special in that he asked his performers to sing in an ugly way if what they were singing about is ugly. And so even though he would write out specific notes, I think that what they ended up doing is a lot more similar to Sprechstimme or Sprechgesang, because in that sense of I want, if it's a performer a great example is a death scene. In a death scene, you would never expect someone to actually be singing beautifully. They're singing and they're dying. So he asked his performers to do this kind of Lady Macbeth is a nasty lady. She's like, Macbeth, go kill go kill the king and we'll take his place, and then we'll kill everyone else because that's the way to do it. She's nasty. And I think when really good performers perform Verdi like that, they make it nasty. So they either kind of scream more than sing if they're doing high notes, or they just completely fade into speech. I wonder if the ghost is there.
And would you say this is the same thing like in like Disney songs when like a very characterful actor is singing things and they're kind of singing, but then they're kind of like also they're kind of talking, and sometimes some certain characters' songs actually feel more talky than like they're definitely fitting in with the song, but yeah. So would you call that
What if it's
recitative
not?
or
Isn't it
Sprechstimme?
neat? Wouldn't you say my collection's complete? A girl who has anything. I don't think that's the one where she actually does that, but it's later. Yeah.
Yeah. When she's like, "What's the word again?" or whatever.
Oh, what's the word again? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Forks or
whatever.
feet.
Feet. Yeah.
Street.
So you would say that is more like Sprechstimme.
I would say that is. And Sprechstimme is a very academic-ish word. So we in English still call it speak singing
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the time. In English, that's what it translates to as speak singing. But I think to me it's the same thing. I'm very liberal with my thinking of things being the same. But I bet there are people who would certainly say that it's not, and that Sprechstimme is very specific, because it can be very specific. There's another graphic that I sent you of, I think 4 or 5 different examples of Sprechstimme. And
these are like the really famous 20th century versions.
And all of these composers are from the early 20th century. All of them also moved to the United States as a result of displacement by Nazi Germany, because they all have Jewish blood. And and I think that's interesting. So that's also relevant to what we were just talking about with Korngold, with both Korngold and with Herrmann. They moved here because of the Nazi occupation. But going back, we see here several different examples of the notation style for Sprechstimme. So the first one, Arnold Schoenberg, in his Pierrot Lunaire, you can see that these are musical notes, but they don't have a note head. The circular part is the note head. They don't have that. But you can see that they kind of move up and down. So that's the first thing you can see, is that they move up and down. So you might have the idea of mit eine fantastischen Mondstrahl. It looks like that strahl at the end isn't quite as low as the fanta part that he says.
So there's not specific pitches, but it is showing you like the intended shape of the line.
And the rhythm is very clear. It doesn't look to me like there's a ton of option to change that. So probably it's connected with, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a drum part, like that was timed perfectly with this or something. And do you have anything you want to say about the Schoenberg example before we move on to the Berg?
Let's just move on to the Berg. Yeah.
So then the Berg Lulu example is very similar. They don't even take the time to, actually I would just call that the same kind of thing. It's just the note head is totally absent. But I always prefer when there's not a ton of flags. I don't find flags.
I think the Berg example looks more clear to me, which is interesting because we get another Berg example later on, Wozzeck, and it is different. There are note heads. Yeah.
And what I would say the difference between, and so that's interesting, we do have 2 Schoenbergs and 2 Bergs, and it seems to me the difference, the top 2 Schoenberg and Berg, the notes all seem kind of close together. So you're just similar to when you're speaking. Most of us don't use tons of inflection, and we're not like, we're not doing that.
It's more like,
but both of the 2-second examples, they do seem to do that. It's den Wein, den Muffin, Außentritt. And that was definitely not meant to be accurate. But that jump would not normally happen in speech. So I think he must have needed to specify that. Same thing in the Berg Bossick example. It's that's more than an octave that is being spanned by this line.
Sorry. Yeah, no, that's right.
hard to read.
Also, are those meant to be, okay, I'm seeing slashes in there. Is that slash notation intentional? Okay, so is that note doubled
Like
then?
tremolos?
Yeah. Is it?
Do you think it's like... So honestly, I don't know. Let's see, is mit etwas... Oh, and this also says mit etwas Gesangsstimme. So he's actually using the phrase Gesangsstimme. He's letting us know that he wants this to be sing-speaking.
Yes,
and to me, everyone could have a different interpretation, and probably there is a right one, and I could have studied this, but I didn't. But I would interpret that as like obnoxious tremoloing of the voice, like I would like enunciate each one twice. I would be like which that's how I would interpret that. But I mean, I would take it to be like literal, like if I was a string player.
Yeah. If you're
how would you do it as a string player?
Well, yeah, you would go. I don't have a note lower than that, but yeah, you would just double it. Because one slash would mean that you double the note. If you saw 2 slashes, then you do 4 times the note. If it's 3 slashes, then that's tremolo and it's unmeasured. It's like unmetered or unmeasured tremolo. But if it's just 1 slash, that would be measured.
Totally. The only other thing I can think of is that maybe he wanted to distinguish which notes were Gesangsstimme and which ones were not. And so maybe he decided to do that. But I think it's very inconsistent when composers do things like that and give things that would... I don't like it when something means something different for a vocalist as it means for a violinist, even though there's tons of things like that.
Okay. I mean, because also sometimes the tremolo notation in like for like flute or like it could be just be flutter tongue.
Totally. Actually, I think the biggest difference is between voice and instrument. So a lot of the basic markings that you would see in a string part will also be in a vocal part, but they don't mean the same thing. Not in practice. Sometime I should make a list of those. That'd be fun to go over.
Yeah.
But then let's move on. So my favorite one is the next one, because I think it's most directly similar to how Palpatine is speaking here. And that's from Franz Schrecker's Die Gezeichneten, which has an extremely disturbing plot. If not like far more disturbing than the plot of Rise of Skywalker.
I think it's also a film.
So, I didn't realize. But yeah, so Die Gezeichneten, that one, we can see that it's slower. It's like that's a little more like the Jedi are dead. It's kind of a little more similar to just he's making a speech, so he's not meant to be going blah 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 blah. Palpatine is she will draw her weapon. She will come to me. So you could notate that with pitches if you wanted like that, and then just specify that it's supposed to be more spoken than sung. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I want to point out that with Sprechstimme, you can get into a lot of trouble because we all have speaking voices that are not necessarily the same. So, and it's almost impossible, I think, to speak at a range that is not your speaking voice, because then it just becomes singing. So, yeah, from a compositional standpoint, you have to be careful.
Yeah, I can see that. So in Palpatine's case, he is definitely not singing, or he's I would say that's not singing. He is not in a range that is not his normal speaking range.
Absolutely. And then the only time that I would say it's almost singing, when he says the Jedi are dead, he does a high pitch. I was able to actually figure out which pitches he was speaking because it was that clear.
Right. Yeah.
And I guess we should just do that. So like in that case,
I'll put up your other.
Great, cool. So yeah, for the Jedi are dead, I put the notes that he's working on above. Mm-hmm. So it's can you play us a C3 and an F3? It's a fourth. Yep. The Jedi are dead. I wish my voice one of my greatest wishes for a superpower would be that I could drop my voice as low as possible. But it's like, the Jedi are dead. And the Jedi were very clearly pitched. And then I feel like the note dead, he had less pitch and more voice. So it was less clear. Mm-hmm. Yes, that is exactly
okay,
how
I want to listen to that.
Now let's listen and see what we think.
Oh, have I gone too far? No.
She will take revenge.
Here we go.
And with a stroke of her saber, the Sith are reborn. The Jedi are dead.
The Jedi are dead. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting.
It's funny
and
how
really
like
good orators do that.
Yeah, I mean, okay, like in a previous episode, the one with Camila, I will put a link in the show notes. She was talking about how we were just talking about how there's so much musicality in Star Wars dialogue, where like it feels like there are rhythms that it often falls into, or like it just something about it feels really musical at times. Like there's poetry in so much of the dialogue, which makes it actually really memorable. And I feel like a lot of good villains are like that, especially. But absolutely here.
Speaking of a good villain who's like that, could you please bring up a picture of Scar from The Lion King? I feel like this scene was so similar to Jeremy Irons' performance in The Lion King.
Yes.
And so I found if you'll think about The Lion King, what we're seeing here is the part where Scar is letting everyone know that Mufasa died, how sad that is, and how even sadder it is that Simba seems to have died. And then he's talking about how glorious it's going to be that the hyenas, he's basically letting them know that, okay, yeah, now your land's also going to belong to the hyenas, who you've always previously considered enemies. They're basically Scar's military force.
Mm-hmm.
I think, is that the clip where it starts
clip.
at 50 seconds?
Yeah. Okay. So, yep. Okay. I will. Here we go.
So it is with a heavy heart that I assume the throne. Yet out of the ashes of this tragedy, we shall rise to greet the dawning of a new era, in which lion and hyena come together in a great and glorious future.
Yes. Oh, it's so good. But yeah, it's like in a glorious future with lion and hyena come together.
Yeah, it's very similar to "and with a stroke of her saber."
Totally is.
She will come to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's very similar.
Yeah. Also, I think Scar from The Lion King is a good like villain template vocally, delivery wise. It's fun. It's great to hear Scar being brought up in the context of a Palpatine conversation, because what I always think of when I see Scar now is Darth Maul in the cartoons. I feel like the way that Darth Maul is in the sounds in the cartoons sounds like Scar, like a dramatic. Yeah, I think it's funny. Scar and Jafar, a combo perhaps.
All very intelligent villains. Who
have a preponderance
Darth Maul
for
is
the melodramatic.
Very intelligent. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And the orchestration was really similar in that clip of Scar just now as it is in this clip with Palpatine, because both of them have the same thing happening orchestrationally. It's just rising lines getting bigger and bigger until at the end it's very sonorous and high-pitched, so that then you can cut off the orchestra, and in Scar's case, the hyenas come out laughing, and in Palpatine's case, the hopeful force connection between Rey and Ben becomes the new focus. So yeah, those are really good moments. There's another, let's see, let me do a little more about Palpatine, and then we'll get into the disciples.
Okay, great.
And so yeah, just to kind of complete the analysis.
I'll put the image back up.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
There we go.
Thanks for gathering all these images, Anthony and Claire.
You're welcome. Of course. Okay, so we have the triplet part.
Yeah, so then it begins the triplets. And I think that's also, when we're thinking about analyzing great speakers, what he needs to do here is increase the sense of urgency and increase the movement. So the first two are very straight and blah, 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 blah. Like,
she will draw her weapon.
Kind of establishing his control over Rey. And then he's actually trying to excite Rey into action. So she will take her revenge. And then after that, it's...
And with a stroke of her saber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with a stroke of her saber. Also saber.
Yeah. I see you have that written. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So it's like 1. I see it's like 3 big beats. 2, 3. And with a stroke of her saber.
Exactly. Like so he slowed it down there for a minute. And then we got to use our hemiola word, because then he suddenly kind of like slows everything down. And instead of being in his own rhythm, he's just slowing down and percussively accentuating, I think, the orchestral beat. So that's the Sith are reborn.
Yes, we got that too.
His pitch kind of drops on born so that it's landing. It's literally reborn.
Yeah, let's hear that.
She will take her revenge. And with a stroke of her saber, the Sith are reborn. The Jedi are dead.
Yeah, I can kind of hear that hemiola effect. I mean,
yeah, there's that feeling. It is still reborn. He didn't make born rhythmic the way I have when I've been speaking it, but the Sith are reborn. Like, it's in between speaking and singing. Very interesting. In between rhythm and out of rhythm.
Yeah. And by the way, a hemiola is like superimposing a duple with a triple rhythm. So it's like 2 notes in the space of 3, or, having like having triplets versus duplets, and then putting them together is like, it kind of has an effect of like switching between triple and duple meter. It is used effectively in a lot of pieces. And here I wouldn't say it's like super clear that that's happening, but it is something like, I think it manifests as that slowing down.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like a slow motion shot in a fight scene or something. A similar effect.
Yeah, because it's like stretching out. Because meter is basically like seconds. It's time. Music moves forward in time, and doing techniques or devices that kind of shift your perception of how quickly we're moving forward, like how time is progressing, do have. Yeah, I think that's a really good comparison, is to like slow-mo. It's like a musical slow-mo.
Yeah, that's what the effect is. So yeah, as he's doing that, his lines are punctuated or heightened. You can see I wrote his lines in orange, and then in pink at the end are the another traditional way of writing Sprechstimme is just putting an X with instead of a note head. That's a very like kind of the most common way to do that. So I wrote down like that, and that is the disciples, the massive Sith disciples. And it's really hard to hear quite what they're doing. But there are two sounds that I think are super similar that exist in recordings. One of them is also from The Lion King. And I immediately thought of it. I wouldn't be surprised, given that Disney already owns this clip. I wouldn't be surprised if it was literally the same clip. But it's part of the, like, when the wildebeests are coming down the mountain and Simba sees them, there's this hya of, like, the choir does a hya kind of a thing. And I think it's,
Oh, yeah, I have it queued up. Okay, you were saying, I think it is.
Yeah, I think it's, I just think that it's the same. It's almost the same.
Okay, let's evaluate. Just the...
It's that...
It is so similar.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's cool. It's an example of a choir.
Did you recently watch Lion King? You just like have it ingrained. That's so funny. I'm impressed that you like remembered that. It's such a specific thing to remember. I'm impressed.
It is. It's a really good moment though. Yeah.
It is, for sure. And now I'm going to actually put this up. It's the Sith Whispers motif. And actually, this is also from Frank Lehman's Complete Catalog of Musical Themes of Star Wars. Yes, I know, take a drink. But he notates it, as Christina just said, was the alternate way, which was doing an X instead of a note head. So that means like it's not a specific pitch. And X's are often used in like percussion notation too, where you have like unpitched things that you're hitting. So yeah, he has it written in that style. That is what they are saying.
Yeah, totally. Is that in fact the words they're saying?
Yeah, Hoshka Danja Koratama. Which you also...
way that... Yeah, all I could really get from mine was like Yati. I was like, Yati. Like, it was really hard to tell quite what they were saying. But yeah, I looked up some of these words.
I'm sure that's not all that they're saying.
Koratama is in the next page that I didn't send you because I was like, I don't hear that one.
Oh, it's okay. It's on Wikipedia, so I can easily put that up there. Yeah, it's funny how you found like a screenshot of this on Scribd. And then it just turned out it was just from Wikipedia. But like it's really funny the things that just get put on there. Wait, Koratama? I don't see it. I'm sure it's on there because like that is also in Duel of the Fates. Koratama, people who speak the Sith language. I know that there's people listening that are actually familiar and know exactly what is being said. So I'm sorry that this is very frustrating to just, stand by. But anyway, would you consider what the Sith Whispers are? Would you consider this speak singing, the whispering?
I would.
Okay.
Yeah, Koratama is not on the screenshot that I sent you. Sorry,
that's okay.
Just confirming that I don't see it there. Nor do I see it in the other one. Okay,
I think Korra is probably...
Yeah, I would consider this something like speak singing. And then when you have a minute, there's another clip of just like what it sounds like to me. I think it sounds like at a football game when the crowd shouts defense. And
it really does.
And it's like defense. It's like what happens when a lot of deep-voiced people or like people who are purposely enunciating in a deep way all say something kind of similar at the same time. And so I just put a clip of what that sounds like.
There's like the hyping up of it. I mean, I would say here there's probably more also higher pitched voices than in the Sith example.
Absolutely.
But yeah, there's something about like the group when a lot of people are speaking together, like a lot of people, there's something interesting about that to me, especially since like when in stadiums and such, when it's like the coordinated effort of it and like how quickly people, like thousands of people can wrangle together to do something at the same time. I mean, because there's like a shared cultural knowledge of what to do. I find that fascinating.
Totally. I also now see that I didn't send you the next example I was going to do, but I must be because I just planned to do it myself. Let me see. Before I take the effort to like make sure I have that link again, because I looked at a million recordings of the same thing. I'll see if I can just sing it, which is I was trying to think of good examples of rituals in music where there was an actual score for the ritual, and particularly when it had the Sprechstimme feel, where it wasn't just sung like witches singing, but it's usually witches. But in this case, it was the three fates who are in Verdi's Macbeth, and they have the famous piece called the Witches' Chorus, which starts with them saying "Que faceste di tesu," which means like, "What are you up to? Tell me about it." And then then they're like, "Oh, scosato un vero," which means I just slit a boar's throat.
Just things that you say, just like
just things that you say.
How's your days going?
But even though it's the three fates, it's a chorus piece. So it's written like all of these different people, the whole chorus singing the same really complicated, really fast lines. And I think Verdi wanted it to be ugly. There's no way to sing it prettily. There's no way to even sing it. Like, it's very impressive if you see anyone singing it clearly, because he writes the music so fast and there's so much text that he specifically makes it sound nasty. And that reminds me a little bit of how the Sith disciples are written here, in the sense that like whatever it is that they were given to do, it wasn't meant to like sound good. It was meant to sound great. And so, yeah, that's similar to in the Verdi Witches Chorus, where like, if it's not just me, but you imagine like 30 different women all trying to hit like, and they sing it really nasal. They do, and then, like, and then it's, I can't even do it on words, but it'd be like, but with words on all of those.
I'm totally going to play an example.
This is actually the other Witches Chorus. It's pretty good.
Of course. I was kind of riveted by it. Okay. That was an example for free, everyone.
I shouldn't have stopped you. Yeah.
No, it's okay. Because there was a little thing. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Got it. Actually got it this time.
You want to look it up still? Nice.
That's great. Do you want me to keep playing, or is that
No,
pretty
that was
represent-
good. Also,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I couldn't sleep last night, partially because I had it stuck in my head so intensely. It is very hard to sleep when you keep singing it over and over in your head. Because we performed that a few times when I was in a choral group, and it was just, yeah.
So when you perform it, are you like trying to be nasal on purpose and you're trying to use a certain tone?
Actually, you don't have to try very hard because of the way it's
that's
written.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah. You can try very hard to be a little more expressionist, but and for sure, I definitely would. But yeah.
Yeah, that I think I guess things that are composed in a way that is meant to come off as ugly, that's a whole topic unto itself. And then whether that ugliness would be evoked through instruction, or whether the whole thing would just be so perhaps unwieldy in certain ways, or in a certain range that would probably, get a certain result. I guess there are ways that fate of it being ugly can be nudged. And then as a performer, you could try to sing it as prettily as you want, but you will probably never get there. I'm thinking like from a performer's perspective, I might always consider something like this to be a Sisyphean task or effort. Or I'm trying to make it sound better, but it's written in a way that is really, I'm climbing uphill. Like I'm not really going to get there.
Totally. It can go so far. Another really famous witch in opera history is the Queen of the Night from Mozart's The Magic Flute. And you do hear it performed beautifully frequently. And in fact, when I'm trying to sing it, I'm like trying to be pretty, but she's actually a scary lady who is trying to like have her daughter murdered. And
I think even when the Queen of the Night aria is being performed prettily, and by that I mean like the soprano is hitting all the notes, I can't, it's so high, I can't do it. Yeah, exactly. I feel like even when the
it's supposed to be more like screaming. It's like that's what's really going on.
And I feel like even when it is being performed well, in tune, nice vibrato, like I don't know, it still sounds shrill because of how it's written.
Yep.
Yeah. Can't escape it. Sorry.
Nope. Yeah. And if you do, you weren't meant to.
Yeah. Yeah. So this was a very good diversion. Okay. So the LA Master Chorale performed the singing on this, in this film. Do you think the Master Chorale, do you think they would have been the ones doing the Sith Whispers?
Yeah. Unless they had just like paid actors that were way cheaper, that it was like, oh, there's a huge budget difference if we just get this recorded by actors being like, because it is really unclear. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's necessary to have a choir doing that.
True.
Unless they could just get it really quickly.
I suppose, but they're chanting in rhythm, so you'd have to make sure the actors could replicate the rhythm or read the rhythm.
True. Actually, that's a very good point.
And then they would already have had the chorale, like in recording sessions, so they could tack this on like another cue. But then I'm wondering, like, does this count as a speaking line? Probably not.
Yeah.
But then if it does, then I think they would have to get paid differently for having lines. But then, because I don't know that I hear the Sith Whispers, like, I don't know that it's definitively part of the soundtrack. I don't know. This is just a question that I have on like how it's categorized.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. I mean, it is well enunciated. There's this like, and like, It's very nice. Yeah, I really don't know, but I almost like the idea that they purposely had made it less clear so that they wouldn't have to pay people for script lines. Not that I'm trying to say they're trying not to pay people, but yeah, I think I'm trying to think of what other choral parts were in this movie, and I should probably have just checked on that a little more right before our recording.
There's not that many.
There's
not that many. There's a little bit in like the kind of big theme where there's like a little bit of but it's just like really an extra texture to the orchestral stuff. Most of the vocal stuff is concentrated in this scene, in this third act, in this Sith Citadel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
I guess
and of course, Palpatine.
And of course, Palpatine.
And right after, I guess I'll just point out that he does, when he says, "Do it," he goes back into more of like a Smeagol kind of a voice. He leaves it's like he forgets himself, forgets that he's supposed to be dignified, and he moves back to his nasty self. His true color comes out. And then he like remembers and he's like, "Make the sacrifice."
Yeah, because he's like, he loses his temper for a while. So he forgets that he's trying to be in control and trying to do a nice show. He's like, sorry, I just yeah.
Yeah, do it. So, yeah, most nice people don't say that.
No, they don't. Certainly don't.
Yeah. Okay. So I will say that is, for me, the only thing I would do pre-Poe and the fighters.
Okay.
I don't think I have any other points.
Great. So then we'll skip back forward to after Rey and Ben have collapsed from having the life force sucked out of them, and then we're cutting back into the battle. So here we go.
Snap! They're on your tail! Yeah, I see him! No! Snap!
And there goes Snap Wexley. So you may notice that there's no music here. We are just getting the reality of war, of this massive, massively outnumbered endeavor. Snap Wexley is from the Aftermath books. We have a flaming ship. He's going down. So rest in peace. Yeah.
Sorry.
Music now.
My friends, I'm sorry. I thought we had a shot. There's just too many of them.
But there are more of us, Poe. There are more of us.
Before we get into the hopeful part, I just want to point out that, like, at the same, like, on one side, I feel really bad for Poe and all the fighters and how sad they are. And on the other side, I'm like, pathetic Poe. Like, you should have known if you were actually a good military squadron commander, you would have known exactly what you were walking into because it's obvious. So I just want to point that out. That, you mean, this feels very pathetic. And
you mean that he shouldn't have been surprised that they were so outnumbered?
Yeah, like, know that in advance and have something ready to tell your squadron other than "I'm sorry" while you die. Like, not great.
Yeah, fair.
I feel very critical of him, but I feel kind of bad about being critical as well because I recognize that that's one more aggressive take. Like, feeling like that he's being pathetic is me being aggressive towards him. Whereas I could take an approach of like, oh my gosh, like, this is really sad and they did their best and they are doing their best. And
I mean, he doesn't have a lot of experience leading yet, so he is learning his tough lessons right now.
Maybe there could have been more character development before this so that he, like, no, I don't know. That's terrible. I don't know. Like, it's just,
I mean, Poe is
to me, this kind of symbolizes, like, what's not, certain things that are not great plot-wise in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this moment like shows them. It's just like, oh, we couldn't have developed any of this beforehand, or I don't know. But you're right, he's learning.
Well, there also is the fact of like, if he had known in advance. So I feel like the rebellion / resistance, their whole thing is that they've always been strapped and they've always needed a Hail Mary because they don't have sufficient resources. Like, what if he did know that they were going to be so outnumbered? What would he have done? They don't have enough resources to prepare for that anyway. So they kind of win by just having the tenacity to just try anyway, despite all odds. So it kind of is their thing as well. Like, if he had known about that, maybe he could have like spared his troops and then brought fewer people up, but that also would be worse. So it kind of like, this works because people are willing to put their lives on the line. It sucks, but it kind of, the naivety is what almost makes this happen. Like, they run on naivety almost, I feel. They have to have a little bit of it in order to do this.
Yes.
Yes.
I still think it's not as cool.
I mean, I don't think it's... Yeah,
like,
it's certainly
in
not.
the Death Star, in like getting the Death Star plan, it was like, okay, we have a target. We looked up the schematics. We know that what we're doing is this, and all of you are going to die while you protect someone, while that someone tries to go down the tunnel. But I feel like Poe could have been like, okay, we're going to have like formation A. And then if it gets bad, we come back to formation B and we're all together and we just see how many, like, that's kind of his job. And if he can't do that, he should. That's the thing about Poe, but that's his character. Like, he's really excited about doing stuff, but not realizing that, like, he doesn't really think strategically very much. So, like, he really shouldn't be in a command position like that. He's a good, like, fighter on his own.
Yeah.
Just like how Anakin is a good fighter on his own. But,
right.
Well, I actually haven't done a strong comparison about Anakin as a general versus Anakin as a fighter. Obviously, Anakin is a better fighter than general. Obi-Wan is more of a general, I think.
I think Anakin also is actually not bad as a general. I think he grows as a general throughout the Clone Wars. Like, you see, he does have like an arc in that regard where he like, cares about people and has his Padawan and everything. But Poe, I mean, you're right that just because they're strapped doesn't mean they can have more of a plan. Because like, you're in A New Hope, they do have like demonstrably more of at least a plan, even though it's going to involve a lot of sacrifice, etc. They do have a plan. Here, I don't know if it's like a case of they had missing information because they didn't even know until they got there, and Finn had a force feeling about it, that they had to go for that communications tower or whatever. Like, they didn't know exactly what they were even doing. They didn't know the plan. I mean, the thing is, they also did have strategy meetings, though. I talked about this in like previous episodes where like they did have those strategy meetings where they were like, we have to shoot the thing, and they're like, hold a maneuver. It was 1 in a million. We can't do that. And Rose is like, we have to do this thing. Honestly, I cannot remember the details because they just wash over my head. But like there was a little bit of that was reminiscent of like the going for the Death Star plan, but it did feel less sticky. Like, it's stuck less. It is. I agree. It's much less clear here, and
totally.
Yeah, that may be like, and also here, Poe and Finn are co-leaders. They're co-generals. So this is on Finn too, I guess. But I guess Finn is leading the ground team that are like on the...
And they have a total strategy. Even though things go badly, they have a strategy.
You're right. I don't know. Any military strategy people want to comment on what the strategy or lack thereof that is happening here? Please do. Also, I think it is...
Echo, turn off the light.
I also think it's interesting that Poe seems surprised by, like, Lando's gathering a whole volunteer fleet behind Poe's back, to surprise him so that Poe thinks that he's in a more desperate situation. That to me feels weird. Like, why doesn't he know that they're gathering a whole fleet? Why does
I did. Well, didn't he know, but he just didn't know who would show up. He knew that Lando was putting out a call and was trying to rally people, but he also knew that there wasn't actually much support for, like, or not know, but like, there's just no way to know how much support there was because of how militantly awful the Empire is with.
And also because in the Battle of Crate at the end of The Last Jedi, no one showed up.
No one showed
when
up.
When Leia put out the call. Yeah.
So then it was especially beautiful that everyone does show up right here. And so we get our excited music.
Agreed. Yes. Okay.
There are more of us.
Well, let's go now.
But there are more of us, Poe.
There we go.
There are more of us.
And that is like, it's unusual to hear the heroic descending heroic tetrachords, the da-da-da-da. We usually only hear that like in the credits or whatever.
Yeah, and then we get the full theme.
It goes all in the key of G instead of B flat. And we see that incredible shot of all of these. The sky is just littered with volunteer ships. All these people showed up. I remember feeling very inspired by this moment. Even though it's kind of cheesy.
Hit those underbelly cannons. Everyone we knock out is a world saved. Nice flying, Lando.
Which I think is a good way of putting it. Hit those underbelly cannons. Everyone we knock out is a world save. Because it can seem like, why would we even try? There's just so many of them.
Yeah, and I think each one is a Shatter class destroyer, whatever they call it, when it's like a planet destroying destroyer instead of just a regular destroying destroyer.
Right, because each of them have one of those. Well, I don't know if it's actually a Shatter class, but is it like from
I meant
Thrawn?
to look that up too.
Like from the Grisks. Well, each of them have like they go from like the Death Star, and then putting the Death Star basically on each ship.
Right. Yeah. No, not an ion cannon. I like when I think at 450 a destroyer goes boom. I love that. I love the sound
just about to get to that.
Destroyer.
Yeah, we're just about to get to that. Let me see if I have a screen. No, it's okay. 450.
Too excited about the destroyer.
Oh yeah, that was good. Okay. I put it in. Okay. We're getting there. Yes. Main theme again.
We have a ship down. We lost the destroyer.
And that's the end of the minutes. We heard a klaxon there at the end too. And then we also had a cameo of a Wedge Antilles cameo. And this actor, Dennis Lawson, I think his name is Ewan McGregor's uncle.
I see the eyebrows. Maybe.
I don't remember what Ewan McGregor's eyebrows look like.
Apparently I do.
Yeah, apparently.
Apparently. This moment is really important because it sets up, I mean, we all know what happens next, right? In the movie. And the thing is, like, you can't really have tragedy unless you have some sort of great victory. And I think that's why we needed the entire, like, Star Wars main theme coming back in its entirety, uninterrupted, with the fleet, so much hope, destroying the destroyers.
Yeah.
And then when Palpatine does what he does next and, like, force lightnings them all.
Yeah.
That couldn't have been so poignant and hopeless and awful if this hadn't been so hopeful and positive.
Yeah, I think of it as like you have to be achieving a certain balance or imbalance in order to like shift something in the other direction. So I feel like making an investment in the yay side of things, in the victorious side of things, earns you a few credits to take a hit. I don't know. That's
totally.
I don't know, but
and Honestly, it's making me realize that, in what I call the pathetic Poe moment, where he's not doing well, maybe he had to not do well so that we could then feel really good about these people showing up. Because maybe it didn't come across when he was, like, if he had his stuff together, it might not have been so hopeless, and then saviors getting destroyed.
A more cynical view of this could also be like, if the sequel trilogy was trying to transition Star Wars away from the older heroes of the past trilogies and pass the baton to newer heroes, the lesson that like Lando, an original trilogy character, still had to save the day, is perhaps a more cynical read of this. Like, the new heroes aren't ready to do it on their own. Like, but I guess a less cynical view would be like, people from different generations are now helping fight the same cause. So, yeah. Like,
this movie and this segment. Oh, keep going. Yeah.
I mean, in terms of all the Lando moments in this film, like, this was the least egregious for me. I think a lot of other Lando appearances in this film are very awkward. I still like that he's in this film. I just think it just, either the script or like the acting or directing in some of the other Lando moments is too cheesy. But here, I think it is appropriate, and the music bolsters it up sufficiently. And this is a moment in the film where I'm needing some wins, so I am feeling it, and it's good.
Yeah, I remember being very devastated at that moment. Like high enough to be devastated.
Did you say hot? Oh, high enough
to be, like whatever. But yeah, this film does have that feeling of one of the, like, something where it's like, oh, these are the children attempting to do the adult jobs and not really doing very well at it. And this moment definitely does come in, and so, and then they come in, and it's, Lando and the older generation comes in and does a much better job.
And Luke does the same thing for Rey.
The original Star Wars movies did have really young people: Padme Amidala, Luke. They're all really young, but there was something in those movies that made that journey sort of okay or reasonable, as opposed to just, I don't know.
Like, you feel like they had more agency in those movies?
They might have had more agency, but also I think it could be context. The movies themselves were so different, and that it was kind of fine to forgive characters for doing kind of dumb things.
Yeah.
Or maybe there was a suspended belief kind of thing. Like, there were certain moments when, like, Anakin was doing different things that were really kind of dumb and definitely not helpful, but for some reason I loved him for those moments, as opposed to, like, Poe in this moment. I did not fall in love with him for how unfortunate he was, the way I fell in love with Anakin for how much trouble he had.
Same.
So that comparison doesn't hold to me. But,
sure. But also, like, Anakin was a main character and Poe is definitely not. I don't consider Poe a main character. He's, like, in the main cast, sure. But, but like, also, people who listen to this podcast know Poe's not my favorite character. I just don't really like Poe very much.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Who do you think the main characters of this movie are?
I think the main character is Rey, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Yeah, that's pretty obvious.
I think in the first movie, I wanted it to, I was thinking it was Rey and Finn, but by this movie, I think it's Rey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it is more equal in this movie than it is. I guess, okay, Kylo Ren is also, like, a secondary.
Mm.
Yeah.
Kylo!
So yeah, we have, those are the 5 minutes. 2 very distinctly different vibes. We have Sith Citadel stuff and then some agnostic action stuff. Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts about these minutes?
Oh, just that it's nice. All of the hyperspace pops when all of those ships come into hyperspace. That's nice.
Yeah, like hearing them all arrive together. Like, yeah,
that was cool.
Very satisfying. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And yeah, that's it.
Nice.
Oh, and that in the audiobook, when Mark Thompson is narrating Finn, it reminds me of how he narrates Anakin. Which, now that I think about it,
yeah, because he does that voice. Like, I know what you
mean.
mean. He does a certain
Same voice.
I don't know, throwing his voice forward or something. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, before we do the last things on the show, I need to specifically call out Alex Cunningham, listener and guest and patron / Discord friend. I want to know if you've seen, I know that you love Macbeth. I want to know if you've seen Verdi's Macbeth. So I hope you report back on this.
It is so good. Sorry.
Yeah. I haven't seen it myself. I've only heard excerpts and studied what I had to study in school from it.
It's weird.
But now you're making me want to see it, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, the musical themes in this set of minutes were Kylo Ren Redeemed themed, Sith Whispers, Knights of Ren, the slow form, Force theme, Really Bad Feeling, Rey, both A and B, the theme and the chimes. We have Mystery, Form 2, Descending Heroic Tetrachords, and the main theme, A and B section. And then in the soundtrack, you won't find any of this music on the official soundtrack, but if you have the For Your Consideration soundtrack, you can hear some of this music on track 19, Coming Together. So last but not least, I must ask you the Star Wars Music Minute questionnaire, Christina. Again, are you ready?
I am.
Okay. Question number 1. In exactly 3 words, what does Star Wars sound like?
Growing bacteria culture. I knew you would like that one.
I feel like I get it,
And then
but
it
also I want to hear you explain it more.
Yeah, I guess I just mean that Star Wars started with John Williams and the music that he originally wrote. And so that's kind of like the original bacteria. And then we basically have now all these different composers and takes of John Williams and all the initial recordings and everything just kind of growing out and out and out. It's all the same stuff, getting bigger and bigger, but mutating as it goes. So growing bacteria culture.
That's so good. Yeah. So your previous answers were heartfelt, direct, dramatic, and droids, hopeful, dramatic. So I think the first couple times you had the same idea for a couple of those words. And then question number 2 is, what is something related to Star Wars music or sound that you want to learn more about?
I want to know if, will there continue to be pop collaborations like the one in The Acolyte with Twin Flame and like many Disney movies? I'm curious about this. Will there continue to be a pop crossover?
Yep. What was that song called? The Power of Two?
I think it was called Twin Flame, but...
Oh, you're right. Twin Flame. Yeah, you said that. Yeah, the Victoria Monet.
But the lyrics were The Power of Two.
Like with Twin Flame. Yeah. Victoria Monet.
Love
in
her.
The Acolyte. Yeah, her albums are so good. Okay, last time you said what you were curious what the aural representation of Chiss brainwaves, particularly Skywalker's, would be. And then previously you said, what are the thematic relationships that tie the dark side with imperialism, musically speaking? Similarly, what musical relationships tie the light side with rebellion, and goodness? Good questions. And then the final question is, what is a score or soundtrack that you're fond of besides anything Star Wars?
This time I'm going to say Bleach. I'm really enjoying Bleach right now. That's an anime. And there's a few amazing things in Bleach. One, also the sound, the composer is Shiro Sagisu. But Bleach does an amazing job ripping off classical music and using it a lot. So the entire first season, the main theme is Dvorak's Ninth Symphony.
Nice.
And
Like,
and so every
like,
time,
which movement?
yeah,
That one?
yeah, like all of like they just take any part that's useful and use it as needed. It's pretty amazing. But it's not 100% the same. It's just more or less the same. And then it changes during the arc right now that I'm listening to. It's called the Waco Mundo arc, which is everything in this season has to do with Spanish words. And so they specifically use, like, I don't really know the music, but I would go, like, I bet you would know it because it's a lot of like violin Spanish music. It's a lot of specifically Spanish violin stuff and Spanish guitar stuff. So I'm sure that if you heard a little bit, you'd be like, oh,
like Sarasate,
that's totally
type of
off
stuff?
of. Probably, yeah. That's what I think.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing I'll mention there is that the sound of hyperspace in Star Wars is really similar, but in Bleach they do an even better job. When you rip between one reality into another reality in Bleach, the sound of like space-time ripping is extremely successful.
Oh, cool.
It's like very good.
Yeah, it's. I feel like it's hard. It would be hard to. I feel like if you were going to have that element in your show, you would have to come up with some sort of unique sound because everything's going to be compared to Star Wars, and you might have to resist the urge to copy Star Wars.
Totally.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice answer. Previously, you said Miss Marvel, composed by Laura Karpman, and Moon Knight, composed by Hisham Nazi. You've also said Dune, Hans Zimmer, sound team led by Mark Mangini and Theo Green. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on Star Wars Music Minute, Christina.
Thank you for having me. Can you tell that the sun has set in the time that we've been here? Because I was using the sunlight as my primary light.
Yeah, the sun has set here too, which I'm glad that I have another light on. You can listen to more of Christina on our Band Batch streams. Some of them are about the Bad Batch. But yeah, we've covered several Star Wars TV shows, and you can find that stuff on this very same YouTube channel if you're listening on YouTube. And if you're listening on podcast, then the Star Wars Music Minute YouTube channel is where you will find this stuff. Yeah. Christina, it's always a pleasure. You always surprise me with your answers, with your analysis.
It is a pleasure. It's very fun to talk about these things with you.
And listeners, next week we will have the rest of the Band Batch on the episode. It will be Justin Scheid and James Waterman. We will be talking about what comes right after this, including that horrific moment that Christina alluded to earlier. So yeah, look forward to that.
The horror!
Anyway, you all know where to find me. I'll put links in the show notes to social media. I should also probably mention outright that I am on Blue Sky at Chrysanthi Tan. The podcast doesn't have its own account yet on there, and I'm not sure if it will. I'm still deciding. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on that. But that's all I have for today. May the Force be with you. Thank you for listening to Star Wars Music Minute.